Here you can see the boss helping me taking out the nailing strips that are along the perimeter of the wall that hold the carpet down. Typically nailing strips come in 4-foot sections, and they have these little nails that stick out towards the wall, and what you do is you stretch your carpet over them and they keep them into place against the wall, and then you put your molding on top of that. These are nailed down with very small nails into the subfloor, and they're very easy to get up. You just need to take a crowbar like you see here and then just pry them up, and then you can just grab them. And then you can see some of the scrap pieces there that are in that bucket. We'll simply put those scrap pieces in the bucket and then just toss these out as needed. In this photo you can see that the carpet and the padding have been removed along with the nailing strips, and everything is pretty much cleared out at this point. And then the other thing you'll notice, if you look up at the ceiling, just behind the ceiling fan, there looks to be like an entry into the ceiling area. It looks like it could be like a crawl space, but what it is actually is access to the piping that is in the bathroom that is upstairs. And there's a whole story behind that, which I will get into at a later project much further down the road. But we'll go into that in some detail here. But essentially, we are going to remove what looks to be like the access point there and just smooth that over and just repaint it over it like a normal ceiling. Here's just another view from the entry into the master bedroom. You can see the bed frame there is up against the wall. The mattress has been moved out into the hallway, and you can see that everything is pretty much off the floor, so we can get ready to paint and eventually get the floors in here. This is just a panoramic view that I took showing the room from a holistic view here, and you can see that the floor is pretty much cleaned out and all of the nailers and the base molding and everything has also been removed. One of the things that we did have to do here is go through and take up any remaining staples that were on the floor from the carpet padding that was stapled down. And essentially what you do there is you just take a needle nose pliers and you essentially take the staples out of the floor. It's really not that hard, but some of the staples do get close to the subfloor, the back end of them, and you have to kind of pry them out with your needle nose pliers. But fortunately there wasn't too many of those, just enough to hold on the padding, and then we spent probably a couple of hours doing that also. Here is that ceiling entry that I talked about earlier, and we decided to take all of that down, and then all I did is I patched it with a piece of drywall and then ended up putting joint compound down with tape and then painting over it with a ceiling paint. And it actually turned out pretty well once it was completed. What you're starting to see here is the typical paint job that we do on the rooms within the house. We are going to use a color called agreeable gray, and that's going to be the theme throughout the house here. And what I'm doing here is actually cutting in the corners and along the edges of the walls before we do the main painting. And instead of using primer, what I'm doing here is using 2 coats of paint. It's actually a primer and paint, but we're going to be putting 2 coats of paint on all the walls in here. That way we can be rest assured that none of this olive green, pastel green is not going to show through the gray, and all we will see is the gray, beautiful color here shortly. So this entire process on painting the 4 walls within this room took a couple of days over the course of the project, and in the next couple of photos you're going to see how well that turned out. Here's a view of the agreeable gray that we're going to be using in the room, and can really see the room starting to take shape as far as the paint goes. The contrasting crown molding that you see there against the agreeable gray is very nice, And those bright white colors on the door and the molding that you see here just really makes that wall stand out quite nicely. And again, that's the theme that we're going here throughout the house, and it's really starting to take shape here, as I mentioned. Here's a view from the other side of the room with the agreeable gray on it, and you can see it just changes the entire dynamics of the room when you have a different color and a neutral color like this in the room. So really happy with the way this turned out. At this point, we're at 2 coats of paint on the walls, and we're at a point now where we are finished with the wall portion of this and ready to move on to the next portion of the project. So with that, we are going to close this series out and move on to the next series and give you some updates there. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, peace out.